2009, the federal government came through with a major infrastructure projects in the 2009 budget. And of course it was a critical time when the economy was, going down and Cairns was starting to struggle. And unfortunately in that, the Cairns region got very little at all. And of course, at a time when we could have done with, some major infrastructure projects being announced in the region, because of the real jobs they create, but also because of the confidence and boost of confidence that an announcement of a major infrastructure would bring. And it was just unfortunate that happened. It was a factor in Cairns was sliding or was going towards high unemployment, and it did so in the few months after that. But it was a factor in that process.
So we've really had a double whammy. We've been hit on many fronts over the last 18 months or so in this region.
Well, of course, we went into the global financial crisis period with a number of things that had weakened the economy. First of all, we went into it with very, very high levels of construction and population growth. And of course, when investment seizes up, as the global financial crisis caused, all that very high level of construction, Cairns was vulnerable to a downturn. And of course, once it starts to turn down, you get multiplier effects coming through. But there were a number of other factors at that time that had meant that the Cairns economy was a bit vulnerable. Some of our big construction firms were in trouble before it occurred. Secondly, there was the announcement of the loss of Japanese flights, and that had, quite apart from the prospect of tourism being down due to that, it caused a further loss of confidence, particularly amongst those who believed that Japanese, probably exaggerated the degree to which Japanese tourism was of importance to the Cairns economy. And so there were a number of factors there that, and the other thing was that we had received a bit of a stimulus in the few years before, from the rebuilding of Innisfail after the cyclone, and that was another factor there, that rebuilding program was winding down.
And you said, of course, the higher we fly, like we had been.
The higher you fly, the harder you fall. And of course, if you've got a large part of your economy in construction, and construction suddenly slows, very rapidly because investors can't get money and all that sort of thing, then it hurts the economy pretty hard. And of course, at that stage, we probably would have had something like up over 15% of our workforce in construction. And if you get a halving of your work, halving of construction activity, it means that has a pretty serious effect on the employment and the economy, etc. Quite apart from the GFC impacts in other directions, the major impact was that very, very strong slowing in construction.
So just generally wrapping up, what's the forecast, do you think?
Well, Cairns has always recovered. It's been through slower periods, but it's produced over decades. It has outrun most other regional cities of Australia. The region it serves is now the largest in population in the north. There's a number of factors, starting to turn positive. We've got to recognise, the world we live in today is a bit different because of the industrialisation taking place in Asia, and we've got to adapt to that. But I've got no doubt that Cairns will bounce back in the coming years. This financial year, it'll probably be fairly slow going. But in due course things will start happening and it will turn back up again.
Great, thank you for your time.
Okay.
G'day Rick, thanks for taking some time to chat. So tell me, what's your optimistic viewpoint of where the property market in Cairns and the region?
Well, the property market in the Cairns region really right now is bouncing along the bottom. So at this stage we're not expecting a great deal of change, but when the property market does start to move, it should be in a general upward direction. We think that it's no longer falling, that it has stabilised. There are some early signs that individual sectors or locations are starting to move a little bit. It's not widespread yet. It's not enough for us to call it a recovery in the market yet. So we're still at that stage of bouncing along the bottom of the cycle, but with light at the end of the tunnel.
Now, you mentioned in your speech to the Chamber just now that there was numerous factors that got us to where we are. In fact, the history would take us back 20 or 30 years into the 70s.
Yes, well, certainly if we look at the long-term history, the long-term price growth in Cairns for property has been averaged about 8% growth over that period, which is inflation plus 3 percentage points. So there has certainly been that long-term capital gain, but within that there has been cycles. When we look at the market right now, there was the boom during 2006-07 that pushed the cycle above the long-term trend rate. It's still a little bit above that long-term trend rate now, but we'd expect it to come back into balance.
What areas were most hardest hit in the last 18 months?
Well, really, the houses, standard houses in standard suburban locations have still turned over. They haven't turned over as quickly as they had been in the previous. But the major impact was on development. Development, whether that be of new unit complexes or blocks of land for new housing construction. Unit sales have come back in the new unit sector by about 60%. Land sales are down about 80+%, so they have certainly slowed quite dramatically. At the same time though, the production slowed dramatically. There are very few units in the process of being constructed, very few allotments in various stages of construction, so there is no oversupply of property out there on the market, but just a low rate of absorption.
Take into consideration your disclaimer. What's your immediate forecast for the region, Rick?
Look, I don't think the property market is really going to do much for the next 12 months. It will stay fairly quiet, fairly slow for the next 12 months, and the possibility of a pickup in late 2011. We've got to get through this tourist season. It's not going to happen much. The market always goes quiet at the end of the tourist season, so that takes us up until the next tourist season in 2011, mid-2011, and perhaps that is when it will be firing again, as long as the economy continues to recover, as long as we continue to make inroads into our unemployment rate and generate some more jobs and some more job security out there.